Welcome back to Sci-Fi Book Trek. Today we will be reviewing War of the Worlds by H.G. Wells.
There are two parts to the novel as it stands. You have The Coming of the Martians, which features the sort of first 130 odd pages, at least in this copy. I'll try not to knock that over.
Yep,
And the second part, The Earth Under the Martians, which is about 80 pages.
Roughly. So in total it's over 200 pages. Long, so...
But again, figuring that it was still part of the serialization format that Wells was originally publishing most of his stories in, I can understand that.
I mean, it's a lot longer than Time Machine.
Yes, it is.
So I would definitely call it a novel, just because I have read other novels that are that length or even shorter.
But I can still imagine that it being published in a smaller breaking format.
Yes.
That makes... Well,
I don't know. It doesn't feel... Though it was serialised, it doesn't feel as broken up as, say, something like Andy Weir's The Martian.
Yeah.
That really felt serialised. This I wouldn't say so as much. I could quite see someone reading this and not knowing they were serialised at all. I mean, maybe they would think it's like it's odd that it's into two books. And there's a part where he goes, book 2, and you're like, okay.
But even with book 1, there's still a notable break point in the middle where the narrator doesn't change, but the point of view of the character does become his brother. Whether that could be considered as a sort of miniaturized novel.
Yeah.
And that would pull it down to about 80 odd pages, 40 odd pages, 80 odd pages, if you were wanting to structure it that way.
I mean, I still like it anyway.
Not supposed to give that away until the end. You know, when we do all the wrap up and the recommendation bit.
I'm not telling you how much I like it, man. I have to wait to end the video for that. Care to tell us about the author?
We previously covered H.G. Wells' previous outing, The Time Machine. At this time of his life, this was a point where he had moved to Woking and was spending his time with his second wife, his first marriage having fallen apart, possibly due to the fact that it was to his cousin. And that's where he wrote War of the Worlds.
Yes. And that's where it starts, in Woking.
Yes.
Right, what you know.
Right, what you know.
Well, let's go on to the publication year. First off, this was written between the years of 1895 to 1897. It was first serialised in 1897 as well, but the first ever publication of it in hardback and first publication was in 1898. So that's the year we'll cover.
And as far as that date, that is the date that C.S. Lewis was born.
Yes, and also the year Lewis Carroll died. Also in that year, radium was discovered by Marie Curie and her husband Pierre,
who then went on to die horribly of cancers and tumours and all sorts when they finally found out what it was capable of.
Objection!
In actual fact, while Marie died of aplastic anemia brought on by her work with radioactive substances, Pierre in fact was killed by a collision with a horse-drawn cart. However, had he not met his end in this manner, he would likely have succumbed to the same radiation-based diseases that killed his wife their daughter, and her husband.
Yes, but that was after some years of using radium to paint on clock faces to make them glow in the dark.
Yes.
And causing so many other people to die of radium poisoning.
But it was a decade of warfare, certainly.
Yes.
There was a lot of conflict going on in the background. America, I believe, were talking about invading Spain if they hadn't already started.
It was the start and eventually end of the Spanish-American War, starting in Havana with the USS Maine exploding, some mysterious reason, but ending in, I think, the Paris Peace Accord at the end of the year.
And Lord Kitchener was taking part in the Battle of Omdurman.
They were working with the Egyptian forces to fight in the Ottomans in Sudan.
Yes, the Sudanese campaign.
Yeah. Have you got another one?
I don't have another one at the moment.
That's what I've got, is the first installation of an escalator. It was in Harrods of London. And
the Otis... Was it the Otis?
No.
No, that's the elevators, rather.
No, yeah. This was Reno, something like that. I think Reno.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was the first install of an escalator. Anyway, but it wasn't an escalator as we know, because it didn't have steps. It was just like a conveyor belt, just at an angle. And you'd get on, go up to the top, and there was a porter at the top to give you a shot of brandy if you needed it, because it was going at an amazing 2 miles per hour.
Don't panic! Don't panic! Don't panic! Don't panic! Don't panic, sir! Don't panic, sir! Don't panic! Don't panic! Don't panic! Oh.
But there were people coming from miles around to actually see and travel on it. And
yes.
Everyone was amazed. It was just such an amazing piece of engineering prowess and scientific discovery.
Yep.
Something that we genuinely take for granted at this point in time.
So, our next port of call is
characters.
It's trying to more encompass, I think, the breadth and scale of the world, well, like London, rather than specifically focus on characters as much. I mean, like, to flesh them out and to give them, you know, motivations or stuff like that.
I mean, you say not to give them motivations. I think there's an interesting dichotomy between the characters that you've got. You have you obviously have the narrator, who's your first person perspective, but Wells does then show you the perspective of someone who is capable, who is perhaps more ready for this type of situation in the signalman.
Yeah.
Someone who's got military experience, who it obviously hits him. The experience obviously hits him, but he has his training to fall back on. He has his knowledge, he has his abilities when they're doing some of the stuff in the middle of the book, and the signalman is actually advising. I'm going to say the narrator. I actually think he's a bit of a self-insert, but...
Yes.
But he's advising the narrator, right, we need to do this, we need to do this. Because he's got that training, he's falling back on his training. By comparison, the curate is the other end of the scale. Someone whose entire worldview has completely been shattered, and he has completely fallen away from any sort of reason, any sort of thinking. I just find that quite an interesting sort of two sides of the...
Yeah, I understand what you mean.
And the narrator in the middle.
I do agree with you. However, it does feel like these aren't like picturing these characters, you could probably picture anyone. It's more what their motives are and what they're trying to symbolize more than the actual person they are.
Oh yeah,
Because sometimes it does feel like they're more types than people.
Yeah,
that's probably what I'm trying to get at.
No, I can. Yeah, you.
Because like
right.
even like you say, the military man. I can see people acting that way who are not military, who may believe they're skilled, but anyway, let's go on to other topics.
Yes.
As for themes and genre of this book, I mean, there are a lot of talk about it throughout the years. However, for me, what strikes me as the main topics were it was showing how humans are quite like the Martians. You know, they go somewhere, destroy civilization, and use it for its own ends. Now, you mentioned about the British Empire with the Tasmanian Aboriginals, which, I mean, as a British person, never heard that part of history. However, if we want to document the violations of the British Empire, sadly, that is...
We would be here for a while.
Yeah. It's not at the top of the list. But anyway, but he does mention that, and also he mentions about, you know, what animals must perceive humans as. Because he was talking about, like, when the Martians do something, let's say, cruel to humans, what we perceive it as. And he brings in and goes, well, an intelligent rabbit would see us as just as barbaric as they are. So he does bring in things like that of, like, you know, we're not exactly on the moral high ground to say these creatures are evil.
Yeah.
And like even at the end of the book, he tries to bring that back and enforce that theme.
Yeah. The opening chapter, like you say, with the near genocide of the Tasmanians, Wells drawing certainly the comparisons between the violence of humanity and the violence of the Martians. He was definitely trying to get across a point of commentary on imperialism.
Yeah.
But it's woven into narrative. It's not a case of, like, we are bad, smack, 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 smack. It's like, it's woven into the narrative as it's a message, but it's part of the message of the story, rather than it's the story has been essentially left by the wayside and the message is all that remains of what you're trying to tell. And it's showing where humanity, like you say, we could become the Martians. The Martians are frankly considered, at least by Wells, as our evolutionary superiors. They are the next step on the scale. They are higher life forms than we, and are, you know, we are considered but cattle.
As we consider lower life forms to us.
Yes.
So I went looking for a few pictures along these lines to try and fill out the video like I usually do. Trying to stay on topic, I used the search terms human cattle and aliens eating humans. I am now aware of what the Hugh Cowan vor fetishes are. So please appreciate the lengths I go to try and find interesting content for you guys.
There are times where it feels like he's sort of maybe not criticising, but pointing out some of the blindness of mankind. Of like, an event has just happened a mile away where people's died, and he goes to up some people and they're just like, yeah, whatever.
I mean, I know what you mean, but I was looking on that as sort of like is this supposed to be funny? Is this supposed to be like almost like a carry-on skit?
Well, that's thing, you could see that actually happening. That's a sad thing. Also, as far as sort of the genre, it is like almost apocalyptic, because it's not only, the lives have been smashed of the characters, but also the civilization. Everything you could point to and go, that is going to outlast me. When I'm dead and buried, that will still be here. And it's like, no, everything's going. Like,
I do genuinely wonder how much influence this had on the likes of Roland Emmerich when it comes to disaster films. It's like the destruction of local landmarks. I mean, that's one of the things actually that I found in my research, is that while he was writing it, Wells took great delight in when people asked, so what are you doing at the moment? And he was taking great delight in telling people, oh, well, I'm just destroying Woking. I'm writing a book where everyone and everything is being destroyed. And you see that landmark? Yes. I completely blew that to pieces in my book.
But yeah. Right then, so final thoughts?
I enjoyed it. This is a good book, and considering the other adaptations, I mean, this is my first time reading. My first experience with War of the Worlds, weirdly enough, was the Tom Cruise film. Yeah, I haven't actually listened to the Orson Welles. I've heard snippets.
No, but that's fine. It's just, yeah. I'll discuss in adaptations what I think about the Tom Cruise film.
It's an interesting thing, but yeah, we'll talk about that later in our spoilers bit. It's a good story, and it doesn't take you too long to get through it, and it's worthwhile. It's worthwhile reading just for the sake of saying, I've read War of the Worlds. But I think it's a great story. I think it's a great story because of the way that Wells has managed to write this message into the narrative without it being so beating you over the head that it's all message, no narrative. I think it's a great story.
Yeah,
that's my thoughts.
I mean, as for me, this is one of the books which actually got me into reading. Because when I was in high school, I hated reading. Didn't see the point of it. I read this thinking, well, I've seen so many adaptations. This one will just be like, I can just say I've read it. Read this, put it down and went, why has no one done War of the Worlds? I think it's a brilliant book. I love every moment of it. I really love it. It's probably one of my favourite science fiction works, or works of all time.
So, we'll leave it there. Next week, guys, we'll be talking about our spoiler review of War of the Worlds. If you don't fancy watching that, obviously join us in 2 weeks where we'll be discussing another science fiction work. Okay. Thanks for watching, guys. Bye-bye. Wells was the child of 2 working-class parents and started off his working Wells was the child of 2 working class parents and started his own.
wait.
Fuck.